The vast docking bay of Helios 1 station buzzed with activity as delegations from across the galaxy arrived for the Intergalactic Peace Summit. Bright banners fluttered in the artificial breeze, each representing the multitude of civilizations gathered in a rare display of universal cooperation. Lieutenant Michael Harris, in his crisp Earth Forces uniform, stepped off the human delegation's shuttle with a confident stride. His eyes, hidden slightly behind a pair of dark aviator glasses, scanned the crowd with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Quite the gathering, huh, Mike?" remarked Commander Alan Rickards, Michael's superior and mentor, clapping him on the back as they walked. "You could say that, sir," Michael replied, his gaze lingering on a group of tall, iridescent beings from Nebulon. "I just hope we can make a good impression." "You always do. Just remember, diplomacy first, heroics later," Rickards joked, knowing well Michael's reputation for diving headfirst into action. At that moment, a slender figure detached from a nearby group and approached them. She was Lyra, a diplomat from Eurylis, her skin shimmering softly under the station's lights, her large, expressive eyes reflecting a galaxy of emotions. "Welcome to Helios 1, Earth representatives," Lyra said, her voice melodic but barely above a whisper. "I am Lyra of Eurylis. The summit's organizing committee has assigned me to assist you during your stay." Michael extended his hand, a smile playing on his lips. "Lieutenant Michael Harris, it's a pleasure to meet you, Lyra. And this is Commander Rickards." Lyra's touch was tentative as she shook their hands. "The pleasure is mine. I hope you find the summit productive." Rickards nodded appreciatively. "We're looking forward to understanding more about your proposals, especially regarding trade routes and security." Lyra glanced at Michael, then back at Rickards. "Perhaps Lieutenant Harris and I should start early discussions. We have much to cover, and the committee is particularly interested in Earth's stance." Rickards agreed, sending Michael a knowing look. "Go ahead, Mike. I'll catch up with the rest of the delegation." As Lyra led Michael away, the commander's teasing whisper followed. "Remember, diplomacy first." Walking through the corridors of Helios 1, Michael noticed Lyra's cautious demeanor. "So, Lyra, tell me about Eurylis. I admit my knowledge is a bit lacking." "It's a peaceful world, much quieter than this," Lyra replied, her voice soft. "We value harmony with nature and have managed to avoid conflict for many generations." "That sounds nice," Michael mused, unsure how to relate. "Earth isn't always so peaceful, unfortunately, but we're trying to get better, one step at a time." Their conversation was interrupted as they arrived at the conference room designated for their use. Lyra gestured towards the door. "Shall we?" Inside, the room was set up with a holographic display in the center, surrounded by seating. Lyra took a seat across from Michael, her posture perfect, yet there was a nervous energy about her. "Let's start with the main concerns of piracy along the trade routes," Michael suggested, leaning forward to activate the display. Lyra nodded, pulling up a star map with several marked areas. "These are the hotspots. My proposal involves increased surveillance and a non-aggression pact among all parties using the routes." Michael studied the map, his mind already racing through several scenarios. "It's a good start. What about enforcement? We've had issues with pirates ignoring these pacts before." Lyra's eyes flicked up to meet his, a flicker of surprise at his directness. "That's what we need to discuss. Eurylis prefers diplomatic resolutions, but we understand that might not be sufficient here." As they delved deeper into strategy, Michael found himself impressed by Lyra's insight and her unique perspective. Despite her initial shyness, her strength and her convictions began to shine through, challenging and yet complementing his own views. This summit, he realized, might just be the beginning of something significant. The next day dawned with the hum of anticipation as delegates moved purposefully through the corridors of Helios 1. Michael found himself reflecting on his conversation with Lyra the previous day, her insightful yet cautious demeanor presenting a stark contrast to his own more direct approach. In the breakfast hall, Commander Rickards joined Michael, his tray laden with a colorful assortment of foods from various worlds. "So, how did the preliminary talks go with our Eurylian friend?" he asked, settling down across from Michael. "Better than expected," Michael admitted, stirring his coffee. "Her ideas are solid, but she's cautious, almost too cautious. It's going to be a challenge to find middle ground, especially with the piracy issue." Rickards nodded thoughtfully. "That's the art of diplomacy, Mike. It's about finding that balance. Keep at it." Later that morning, Michael and Lyra reconvened in a smaller, more private meeting room to hash out their joint presentation to the summit's main committee. The room was stark, with only a table and 2 chairs, and a viewport showing the vastness of space beyond. As we prepare this presentation, I think it's crucial we address not only the logistics of our proposal, but also the potential cultural objections. Lyra began, her hands neatly clasped on the table. Michael leaned back in his chair, considering her point. You mean the concerns about sovereignty and the enforcement of this pact? Exactly, Lyra nodded. Many civilizations, including mine, are wary of too much interference. They fear it might lead to larger powers controlling their space under the guise of protection. That's a valid concern, Michael conceded. We need to make it clear that this is a cooperative effort. No one is handing over their sovereignty. It's about mutual benefit and shared security. Lyra's eyes lit up with a hint of admiration. Well said, Michael. Perhaps you could take the lead on that part of the discussion. Your straightforwardness could be very persuasive. All right, I can do that, Michael agreed, feeling a surge of respect for her strategic mind. And maybe you could handle the parts about the diplomatic benefits and long-term peace prospects. That seems more in your wheelhouse. Agreed. Lyra smiled slightly, warming up to the collaboration. They spent the next hours immersed in discussion, drafting and redrafting their proposal. As they worked, Michael was impressed by Lyra's diplomatic acumen, her ability to foresee objections and propose viable solutions. Conversely, Lyra found herself increasingly appreciative of Michael's directness and his ability to cut through unnecessary complexity to find the heart of the matter. By the time they paused for a break, the framework of their presentation was solidly in place. They stepped out into the station's observation deck, a quiet area with a panoramic view of the stars. This partnership is turning out to be more productive than I anticipated, Michael commented as they looked out at the swirling galaxies. Lyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. I agree. It seems our differences might actually be our strength. As they returned to their quarters to rest before finalizing their presentation, both felt a cautious optimism. The task ahead was daunting, but for the first time, both felt that together they might just be able to sway the summit towards a meaningful resolution. The days leading up to the presentation were intense, with Michael and Lyra spending long hours refining their strategy and rehearsing their arguments. Despite the pressure, a camaraderie developed between them, built on mutual respect and the shared goal of ensuring the success of their proposal. However, beneath the surface of their professional interactions, a more personal dynamic began to unfold, particularly for Lyra. In the privacy of her quarters, Lyra found herself reflecting on the unexpected emotions that Michael's presence stirred within her. His confident demeanor, combined with a genuine concern for the well-being of others, contrasted sharply with the more reserved and formal attitudes of her own species. This difference intrigued her, and, to her discomfort, drew her to him in a way she hadn't anticipated. As the final rehearsal concluded, Michael noticed Lyra seemed more distracted than usual. Everything okay, Lyra? You seem a bit off today, he asked, his tone laced with concern as they walked through the quiet halls of Helios 1. Lyra hesitated, caught off guard by his directness. I'm just tired, I suppose. The weight of tomorrow's presentation is quite heavy. Michael nodded, understanding the strain of diplomatic responsibilities all too well. I get it. These negotiations can be draining. But you've been incredible through all this. We wouldn't be this prepared without you. Lyra felt a flush of warmth at his words, her heart beating a little faster. She quickly turned her gaze away, focusing on a viewport showing the distant stars. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot, especially coming from you. The silence that followed was charged with an unspoken tension. Lyra was acutely aware of Michael's proximity, the air between them thick with something she dared not name. Michael, sensing her discomfort but misinterpreting its cause, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hey, whatever happens tomorrow, we've done our best. And no matter the outcome, I'm proud of what we've accomplished together. Lyra's breath caught at his touch. It was meant as a simple gesture of comfort, but to her, it felt like a spark. She quickly stepped back, her eyes wide. I need some rest. Good night, Michael. Watching her retreat, Michael was left puzzled by her sudden withdrawal. He shook his head slightly, attributing it to pre-presentation nerves. The night before the presentation was restless for Lyra. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of professional worries and personal revelations. The feelings she harbored for Michael were inappropriate, she told herself sternly. She was here to represent her planet, not to indulge in personal attractions, especially not with a human whose approach to life and diplomacy was so radically different from her own. Yet, as she tried to sleep, she couldn't help but replay their interactions, each moment highlighting both his admirable qualities and the growing connection she felt towards him. It was a connection that frightened her, for it challenged the very principles she lived by. But as the stars outside her window trailed across the sky, she couldn't deny the truth. Her admiration for Michael had deepened into something more profound, something she couldn't just ignore. The day of the presentation arrived with a charged atmosphere at Helios 1. Delegates from numerous star systems filled the grand auditorium, their murmurs creating a low, continuous hum of anticipation. Michael and Lyra, having arrived early, reviewed their notes one final time, each aware of the importance of the hour ahead. As they made their way to the podium, Lyra felt an unexpected calm settle over her, bolstered by Michael's reassuring presence beside her. He gave her a nod. "We've got this, Lyra." Their presentation began smoothly, with Lyra outlining the challenges of piracy along the interstellar trade routes and Michael detailing their joint proposal for a cooperative defense pact. The audience listened intently, their expressions ranging from skeptical to intrigued as the duo skillfully navigated the complexities of their proposal. However, midway through their Q&A session, the unexpected occurred. Alarms blared through the station, and the room's lights flickered ominously. Confusion swept through the crowd as security personnel rushed in, urging calm. "There's been a breach in the station's security protocols," one of the security chiefs announced. "We need to evacuate this section immediately." Amidst the ensuing chaos, Michael's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Lyra's arm, guiding her towards the nearest exit. "Stay close to me," he shouted over the noise, his voice firm. Once they reached safety, it became clear that a radical anti-peace faction had orchestrated an attack on the summit, viewing the diplomatic efforts as a threat to their power. The station was on lockdown, with reports of sabotage and armed insurgents blocking several critical junctions. Dean Zelnari quickly organized an emergency meeting with all available delegates and security teams. "We must stand united," she declared, her voice cutting through the tense air. "This summit represents our collective hope for peace and security. We cannot let it be undermined by violence." Michael, standing beside Lyra in the crowded room, felt a surge of protectiveness. "We should help," he said, turning to her. "Our proposal has already drawn attention. We could use it as a basis for a coordinated defense strategy right now." Lyra nodded, her earlier reservations overshadowed by the immediate need to act. Together, they outlined a plan that utilized both human and Eurylian tactics, advocating for a series of rapid strategic strikes against the insurgents, combined with a strong diplomatic message to their supporters. With Dean Zelnari's approval, Michael led a volunteer squad, including several delegates trained in combat, to retake control of the station's security systems. Lyra, meanwhile, worked with the communications team to craft a message that appealed to the insurgents' less radical sympathizers, urging them to stand down and return to the negotiation table. The counteroffensive was tense and fraught with danger. Michael and his team moved swiftly through the station's corridors, disarming traps and engaging enemy combatants with non-lethal force where possible. Lyra's message, broadcast throughout Helios 1, caused visible confusion among the attackers, many of whom hesitated, allowing station security to regain the upper hand. By the time order was restored, the summit was irrevocably changed. The attack had frightened many, but it also galvanized the delegates. The need for a united front against such threats became undeniably clear, and Michael and Lyra's proposal received newfound attention and support. Exhausted yet exhilarated, Michael and Lyra met again in the aftermath, their relationship deepened by the crisis. "You were incredible today," Michael told her, admiration clear in his eyes. Lyra, her earlier fears momentarily forgotten, allowed herself a small smile. "We were incredible," she corrected him softly. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them, born out of necessity but strengthened by genuine respect and emerging affection. In the days following the crisis at the summit, Michael and Lyra found themselves hailed as heroes. Their actions had not only helped thwart the attack, but also demonstrated the effectiveness of their cooperative defense strategy, garnering them significant support from previously skeptical delegates. As the station returned to normal, Michael and Lyra continued to work closely, now tasked with implementing the finer details of their defense pact. The urgency of the crisis had accelerated the adoption of their proposal, and they were invited to participate in high-level strategy sessions with leaders from various worlds. One evening, after a particularly grueling series of meetings, Michael suggested they take a break. "Let's step out for some air," he said, leading Lyra to one of Helios 1's observation decks. The deck, with its panoramic views of the surrounding cosmos, offered a moment of tranquility away from the political maneuverings. As they stood side by side, watching a distant nebula swirl in hues of violet and green, Michael turned to Lyra. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what happened during the attack. Not just about what we did, but why. Why did you choose to trust me, to follow my lead when things got tough?" Lyra considered his question, the stars reflecting in her thoughtful eyes. "At first it was because I had no better plan," she admitted. "But as we acted, as I saw your determination and your willingness to protect others, I realized that there's much more to you than the savage human stereotype that some hold. You care deeply about others. It's compelling." Michael smiled, a hint of relief in his expression. "I'm glad you saw that. I've been impressed by your courage and your intelligence. You're not just a diplomat, Lyra. You're a leader." The acknowledgement warmed Lyra more than she expected. "Thank you, Michael. Coming from you, that means a lot. This whole experience has changed my perspective on a lot of things. About diplomacy, about humans, and about us." "Us?" Michael echoed, his voice dropping to a softer tone. "Yes," Lyra hesitated, her vulnerability evident. "I can't deny there's something between us, Michael. These intense circumstances have brought us closer, and I find myself drawn to you. Not just as a colleague, but perhaps as something more." Michael took a step closer, his presence reassuring. "I feel it too, Lyra. And I've been wondering if this attraction could be something worth exploring beyond the confines of this summit." Lyra looked up at him, her decision clear in her resolve. "I would like that, Michael. But it's complicated. We come from different worlds, different cultures. There's a lot we would need to navigate." "True," Michael agreed, his hand reaching out to gently grasp hers, an offer of connection she didn't pull away from. "But I think it's worth trying, don't you?" Lyra nodded, her hand tightening around his. "Yes, I do." As they stood together, the galaxy spinning silently around them, the potential challenges of such a relationship seemed dwarfed by the possibility of what could be. In that moment, they chose to take the first steps towards something new, uncertain yet filled with the promise of mutual discovery and understanding. In the aftermath of their candid conversation on the observation deck, Michael and Lyra's relationship deepened, both professionally and personally. Their newfound understanding and mutual attraction began to influence their interactions, infusing them with a warmth and cooperation that did not go unnoticed by their peers. Back at the conference, as they continued to refine and advocate for their defense pact, they also began to explore ways to integrate their cultures and tactics in other aspects of interstellar relations. This task, however, presented new challenges. The differences in their species' communication styles, ethical norms, and long-term strategic goals required careful navigation. One afternoon, Michael and Lyra organized a workshop for key delegates focused on cultural exchange and military cooperation. The goal was to extend the principles they had used in their successful defense strategy to broader areas of cooperation, such as trade, scientific research, and environmental conservation. "Understanding each other's backgrounds can only enhance our collaboration," Lyra explained to the group, her confidence buoyed by her evolving relationship with Michael. "Just as Michael and I have learned from each other, we believe there is immense potential in fostering deeper connections among all our civilizations." Michael chimed in, his demeanor enthusiastic yet grounded. "For instance, human military tactics often focus on adaptability and improvisation, which can be useful in rapidly changing scenarios. Perhaps there are elements of this approach that can be useful in your emergency response systems or in disaster relief efforts." The workshop included interactive sessions where delegates could simulate negotiations, using scenarios that required them to apply a blend of tactics from different cultures. Michael and Lyra facilitated these exercises, guiding the discussions and helping to translate different cultural cues and negotiation styles. As they worked together, the delegates began to see the benefits of such diverse strategies. A diplomat from the aquatic planet of Aquaria suggested incorporating human crisis management techniques into their flood prevention protocols, while a representative from the technologically advanced Siliconics expressed interest in adapting Eurylian diplomatic protocols to improve their trade negotiations with more reserved cultures. Seeing the positive outcomes of these sessions, Michael and Lyra felt encouraged about the possibilities. However, they were also aware of the undercurrents of resistance from some factions within their own governments, who viewed such deep integration with skepticism and wariness. One evening, after a particularly intense day of workshops, Lyra and Michael walked through one of Helios One's many gardens, discussing the progress and the obstacles they still faced. "It's like navigating a minefield sometimes," Michael said, looking out over a bed of glowing nocturnal flowers. "For every step forward, it feels like there are forces trying to pull us back." Lyra nodded, her hand brushing against his as they walked. "I know. But we can't let fear dictate our path. What we've started here, it's important, Michael. Not just for us, but for the future of interstellar relations." Michael stopped, turning to face her, his expression serious. "I agree. And whatever happens, I want you to know." Before he could finish, Lyra reached up and placed a finger on his lips, her smile gentle. "I know, Michael. I feel the same. Let's promise to focus on what we can achieve, together." Hand in hand, they continued their walk, the stars above shining down on them, silent witnesses to their burgeoning partnership and the quiet strength of their commitment to each other and their cause. As the summit drew to a close, Michael and Lyra prepared for one of their most significant challenges yet, the final presentation to the Assembly of Delegates, where they would officially propose their integrated defense strategy and broader cooperation initiatives. The stakes were high, as the success of their proposal would potentially shape the future of interstellar relations. In the quiet of the early morning before the assembly, Michael and Lyra met in a small conference room to run through their presentation one last time. The air was thick with tension, but also with a sense of anticipation. They had come so far, both in their professional journey and in their personal connection. "Are you ready for this?" Michael asked, looking over at Lyra, who was reviewing the holographic slides they would be using. Lyra looked up, her eyes steady. "As ready as we'll ever be. No matter what happens, we've done something important here, Michael. We've shown that even the most unlikely allies can find common ground." Michael nodded, feeling a surge of admiration for Lyra's poise and determination. "Let's go make history, then," he said with a determined smile. The assembly hall was filled to capacity, with representatives from hundreds of planets and civilizations. The buzz of conversation quieted as Michael and Lyra stepped onto the stage. The weight of the moment settled over them, but together, they felt unstoppable. Lyra began the presentation, her voice clear and confident as she outlined the challenges faced by their respective worlds and the opportunities for cooperation. She spoke of the recent crisis and how their joint efforts had not only repelled the attack, but had also strengthened their resolve to work together. Michael then took the podium, delving into the specifics of their defense strategy. He discussed the tactical advantages of integrating human adaptability with Eurylian diplomatic finesse. He used examples from their workshops, showing testimonials from other delegates who had seen the benefits of such cooperation firsthand. "As we stand here today," Michael concluded, "we ask you not just to consider our proposal, but to embrace a new era of interstellar relations, an era where diversity is seen not as a barrier, but as our greatest strength." The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Michael and Lyra exchanged a look, a mix of relief and joy passing between them. They had done it. They had conveyed their vision to the galaxy. After the assembly, as delegates came up to congratulate them, Dean Selnari approached with a broad smile. "You two have truly surpassed all expectations," she said, shaking their hands. "Your work will serve as a model for future diplomacy. We are all in your debt." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Michael and Lyra walked together to the observation deck, where they had shared many pivotal moments throughout the summit. They looked out at the stars, the galaxy sprawling before them, beautiful and vast. "Whatever comes next, I'm glad I'll be facing it with you," Michael said, taking Lyra's hand in his. Lyra squeezed his hand, her smile radiant. "And I with you, Michael. Together, we'll keep pushing the boundaries, for peace, for progress." They stood in silence, the vastness of space a reminder of the infinite possibilities ahead. Together, they had sparked a change that would ripple across galaxies, bringing with it hope for a united future. The final day of the summit arrived with a serene calmness that blanketed Helios One. Michael and Lyra, having successfully presented their groundbreaking proposal for an integrated defense strategy, now faced the aftermath of their efforts. The proposal had been met with overwhelming approval, and plans were already underway to implement the strategies across various interstellar territories. After the hectic schedule of the past few days, Michael and Lyra took a moment to retreat to their favorite spot on the observation deck. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, stars twinkling as if in celebration of their success. "Can you believe it, Lyra? We actually did it," Michael said, his voice a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Lyra smiled, her gaze fixed on the cosmos. "I knew we could do it. Despite all the challenges, I always had faith in our vision. And in you," she added, turning to look at Michael with deep affection. Their conversation drifted to the future, discussing the implementation phases of their plan. Lyra was set to lead a task force dedicated to the education and training of mixed-species units, while Michael was appointed as a liaison officer to ensure the smooth integration of human tactics into alien military protocols. As they planned their next steps, the topic inevitably shifted to more personal matters. "You know, all this time we've been focusing on everyone else, making sure the galaxy gets a fighting chance at peace. Maybe now we can think about us?" Michael ventured tentatively. Lyra's expression softened. "I've been thinking about that a lot," she admitted. "Whatever us can mean for two people from different worlds. It's uncharted territory, Michael, but if there's anyone I'd want to explore it with, it's you." Encouraged by her words, Michael reached out, taking her hand. "Lyra, being with you, working with you, it's made me a better man, a better leader. I can't imagine going forward without you by my side." Lyra squeezed his hand, her heart full. "And I wouldn't want to. Let's face the future together, whatever it may bring." Their quiet moment was interrupted by a soft alert from Michael's communicator. It was a message from Dean Selnari, requesting their presence at the closing ceremony. They stood together, hand in hand, reluctant to leave the tranquility of the stars behind, but ready to face whatever challenges awaited. At the ceremony, the air was electric with optimism and a sense of accomplishment. Dean Selnari delivered a powerful closing speech, highlighting the success of the summit and the promising future brought about by the efforts of leaders like Michael and Lyra. "As we close this chapter of the summit, we look forward to the ripple effects of what we have started here," the Dean proclaimed. "Thanks to courageous and innovative leaders like Michael Harris and Lyra of Eurylis, we step into a future where peace is not just a hope, but a possibility." As the crowd applauded, Michael and Lyra exchanged a look of shared pride and anticipation. They had not only changed the course of interstellar relations, but had also found each other, a personal victory in the vastness of space. The summit concluded with a celebration, filled with music and laughter, a testament to the unity that had been forged among the stars. Michael and Lyra joined the festivities, their spirits high, knowing they had started a journey that would go beyond diplomacy and into the heart of what it means to be truly connected. Together, they had faced formidable odds and had come out stronger, not just as diplomats, but as a couple ready to navigate the future, whatever it might hold. As the music swirled around them, they danced under the stars, their hearts aligned with the peaceful rhythm of the universe.